I will have to check this later. This is all kind of a work in progress experiment for me. But right now I'm trying out my new Atik Horizon one-shot color CMOS camera on my 8-inch Celestron CPC telescope. And what we're looking at right now is the Veil Nebula, which is something I've never really tried to image before, but appeared to be fairly high up in the sky tonight, and I thought would be a really neat way to test out some of the features of this Infinity software, which I'm pretty interested to see. Um, in general, it stacks, on this here. You can have it actually stack the image as it's taking each one of these 25-second exposures. So the first exposure I took here was just stars in black. That's pretty much it. But as it's been going, and it's grabbed about 400 seconds worth of 25-second exposures, you can really start to see this detail coming out in the nebula, which honestly is just impressive as hell. So far, I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with this. Um, I'm not actually sure if it's recording to YouTube or not based off of the indicators up there. So I'm going to check it and see if I can find this live broadcast separately here. Well, it says I'm live. Turn the volume down so I don't get anything crazy going on here. But it sure looks like it's showing me moving around there. So hopefully we're actually live here. Okay, so don't expect anybody to be chatting with me on this first one because I haven't really told a lot of people about this channel. But so for those that may come and look at this later, the idea with deep sky astrophotography is that the camera can see more than your eye can. And it can do that by taking longer exposures. The problem is, especially with the kind of telescope I have, is having that camera look at the exact same spot while the sky is moving overhead uh, is incredibly difficult, right? So there's a lot of different kinds of mounts and hardware and things that you can get that will let you have it point at the same spot. But as the title of this channel would suggest, I'm a little bit lazier than that. So I have a little bit more standard mount that doesn't quite track in the same way. But what you can do in that case, and you would still do this even if you're taking the deeper, the longer stuff, is you would stack the images. So as I was mentioning before, I'm taking 25-second exposures. That's about as long as my scope can go looking at the same spot before all these stars would start to elongate and look like they were trailing off to the side. So kind of played around with that earlier and found that was kind of the sweet spot, it looked like, for where we are right now. And then the handy thing about this is most of the time when you're taking these pictures, you kind of take all the pictures, you look and make sure they're in focus, you kind of look at one and say, okay, it looks like I got what I was looking for. And then that's it until you're all done for the night. And then you take them back inside, start stacking them together in software outside of that, and then you start seeing all the detail coming out. And that's mainly because the stacking allows it to remove a lot of the noise in the picture and keep more of the signal. So, and that's all great, except once again, I'd like to see this stuff while I'm out here looking at it. I'd like to see stuff getting prettier and prettier as I'm taking the pictures, and that's specifically what this live stacking idea is doing. So essentially, I've told it, as each time it takes another image, go ahead and stack it automatically with the other ones that I've taken, and then it has a rejection here. So you don't need to know what this acronym stands for, but it's essentially looking for the side size of the stars in the image. So if I have any of those ones where they start to trail out and get real big, it'll go ahead and reject them. So you can see it's rejecting about a third of the images right now. And that's really because I'm right at that max limit of what my mount can handle. But that's fine. I'd rather get as much light as I can into this thing and then reject a few, about a third of the images at the moment. As I get better with this, I'll probably refine it a lot. But then after that, what really makes this cool is all of these automatic settings in the images here that it's doing. So, for example, let me just show you full range. So this is what the actual image looks like coming straight off the camera, right? You can see a few stars in it, and other than that, it's not too impressive, right? But that's really where the power of these tools is coming into play, because underneath here, you can see where all these lines are where actual data is being captured. And this line is the black point, and all the way up at the end is the white point, where kind of these stars are really hitting here. But you can see there's a ton of data in the middle, right? And that data is just too close to the black point when you look at it in a normal view to be able to see everything. So typically you'd take this into Photoshop and you would start pulling levers around to try to get that data out. And I'm going to do that with the final set of images at the end of the evening here. But another cool thing on this software is you can start saying, okay, I've got different settings here, like full range minus, which will kind of bring out some of the gray that's sitting in the sky. Let's look if we move it to kind of low, kind of gain on this. Okay, well, I'm starting to see a little bit of wispiness here. It may be kind of hard to see coming across on YouTube, but I can see a little bit of wispiness there. Okay, well, what does medium look like? And on some of these, what you'll notice is the noise starts showing up a lot more, but I can also see, oh, hey, I am getting some detail. I'm getting some detail all the way up here. And well, let's look what it is on high, and that's really going to blow it out. But you can now definitely tell, oh, there's data in here, right? There's definitely some stuff going on. The setting I had it on beforehand, I think I had it on max peak, but we'll switch it over to mean standard deviation. And all that's doing is trying to pick where these lines should be for me. It's just trying to make it a little bit more dummy proof, right? So I don't have to drag all these sliders around. In this case, you can see, okay, a lot of the noise is down. I can still see some of the wispiness, but if I go to the max peak one, this is closer to where I was before. So I've still got a decent amount of noise in here, but I'm also seeing this nebulosity come out really well. And you can see, you may have noticed when the last image updated, these things moved automatically. And that's really because each time it gets a little bit more signal in a picture, the noise that comes along with it starts to become less and less when you average them all together. It's kind of a square root equation kind of deal. And because of that, each successive image in the stack, once it's processed in, makes the data that you've got just a little bit better. Now, there's a law of diminishing returns on this whole thing, right? If I were to take 5,000 images, the 5,001st image is not going to really make that much of a difference. But when I'm looking at this in terms of stacking 28 or 30 images, those 30 are going to look way, way better than 1 or 5. And that kind of thing. Additionally, I've taken some other photos that help calibrate this in terms of the dust that I've got in my system. It's probably hard to see through, but I've got a little donut here, a little donut there, another one kind of at top. So you can actually kind of take what are called flat frames that take some of that dust out. So I'm hoping from how much I'm actually seeing right here, right now, by the time I actually take this into the dedicated programs that split it out and really, or stack it all up and really kind of help improve the image, and I play around with it, I'm thinking this is actually gonna come out a lot better than anything I've done before, looking at some of these nebulas. So I got to admit, so far I'm pretty darn happy with this. Um, but yeah, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna let this run until we get to probably about 40 images overall that make it. So probably about another 5 minutes worth. Um, and then once I've done that, I think that'll be good enough for me to prove that this is working. And what I'm going to try to do at that point is I'm going to try to go to a different target that for anyone who may be trying to watch this later on here, that it'll actually be a little bit more impressive to you. Give you something that's pretty interesting to see. So while I let this capture, I'm going to pull out my phone and look at my planetarium software and look at what I had on my list that I wanted to look at tonight. So feel free to talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, wow, that image is really starting to come out nicely. See in here a lot more detail starting to come in. I'm hoping we can pull up a galaxy here. I just want to see what we've got. That noise is my neighbor's air conditioner, by the way. I'm in Dallas under very heavily light polluted skies. I'm running a light pollution filter in this, which, while it helps a lot, it's they'll always say it's no substitute for being under truly dark skies. But it's a beautiful night out here. Only a little under 80 degrees. Pretty nice night to be hanging out outside. Right up to 34 images stacked there. That's getting pretty good. Ah, Fireworks Galaxy. Yeah, that might be pretty good. Let me see here. Oh, yeah, that might be pretty good indeed. Okay, well, we'll go to that one here once I've got what looks like a pretty good amount of light on this one here. We're up to 35. Yeah, let's wait and make it a nice round 40, and uh, and then we'll go and see what we can see on a galaxy side. Forgive me a minute while I inception here and actually look at the live stream that's on YouTube and listen to it on my phone. See if anything's coming through on the audio side. Does not. Says I'm live. Oh, nope. Volume down so I don't get anything crazy going. Yep, there we go. Okay, I just hit a point where I wasn't talking too much. All right. Well, this works pretty well. So, for folks that I've been talking to on Facebook that said they were interested in this, I hope it's interesting. I think one of the things you'll find by watching this is that it's slow going, right? You're doing long exposures. For me, 25 seconds is a long time between pictures. There are definitely plenty of folks in this hobby that have gear that lets them take, an image, a frame over 10 minutes for a single frame. Some go even longer. Um, as much as I would love to be one of those guys who gets the astrophoto of the day from NASA, I don't think I want to spend that much money, especially when I can get to the point of seeing this level of detail off of a relatively inexpensive camera. Runs about the same price as a nice DSLR. Um, hooked up to my telescope that's primarily, it's a nice scope, but it's really meant for looking at the planets. It's meant to give you a lot of detail when you look at Jupiter and stuff like that. Typically considered a little bit harder uh, for deep sky astrophotography, but this software is really impressing me here. It's really making it a lot more fun to sit there and kind of see what you can tease out. I always had the inclination when I was taking one of these pictures to try to really blow it out while I was taking the original image, because if we jump back to what this full range looks like here, this just always made me feel like I didn't get it, right? I didn't get what I was looking for. I was trying to take a picture of a nebula, not 80 or 100 stars, right? But that's really kind of the devil in the details here, right? Is that you're trying to get just enough information to be able to tease it out without getting so much that you've essentially just filled up your sensor with noise, right? And so it's really kind of going through and saying, okay, how do we stretch this out to really see that detail that's in there? And then afterwards you go back in and you can remove gradients and despeckle and do all sorts of stuff to remove more of that random noise. um, but yeah, really satisfying to kind of look at it this way. And then just so you can see, kind of how this stuff works, these sliders down here, I can drag and start pulling down the white point, right? Where is that point coming in, right? And this is where kind of the artistry of deep sky astrophotography comes in, right? As you start playing with the mid-tones and the high points and the low points, and where your black comes in, so that you can get to the point where you start showing a lot more of the nebula and a lot less of the sky background. And as you can tell, it's real easy to kind of make this look bad, right? And that's one of the things that's really nice about kind of having some of these things that will auto range it for you, in some ways, is it makes it a lot easier to kind of just sit here and enjoy it. All right, well, hey, we're up to 44, so I talked for a long time here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and uh, stop the recording part of this. Not the recording to YouTube, but this is recording to the nebula that it's going to go in. We're going to say stop taking pictures from now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and move to the fireworks galaxy. So I'm going to go ahead and move my scope over. So maybe a little bit of dead air for a minute here while I do that. So that sound you were hearing was actually the motor on my scope moving it over to where we're trying to be. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn this exposure level down and put it to about 10 seconds just to take a quick picture. We're going to turn off the stacking right now just to see what's out there. Hopefully this will work, won't freeze up on me or anything. So wait for the bar to fill up. And it'll probably look funny because of the settings that I've got this at. Yeah. So let's switch this back to around medium and high. All right. All right. Not seeing too much in there yet, so why don't we go ahead and blow it up to a 20-second exposure just to see if it finds anything in here. All right. Definitely looks a little different now. So let me switch this over to our full range minus. Now you can see, when you see these stretchy stars here, that means the stars are trailing on me. So let's bring this around, see if we can find any detail in here right now. Not too much that I can see, so why don't we go ahead and give this a try just to see if we can start pulling anything out. So we'll go ahead and stop images for now. Let me go ahead and change Veil Nebula. Let's make a new folder in here. And we'll call this one Fireworks. So make a new folder. That's where it's going to save the individual images that I'm taking. So go ahead and say OK there. Make sure our recording is on. Go ahead and say we want to stack these images. Leave my same rejection in there. And we'll leave it at 20 to start. And we'll go ahead and start taking the images. We'll see if this can start pulling anything out here. So we're going to go ahead and put this back to an auto range. And sorry, I always want to leave it on the auto color balance because otherwise it'll look kind of green because of the filtering. So we're going to put this up at the max peak here and let it start to filter this out. We'll see kind of what this comes in as we go. So at the beginning here, you can see we obviously have a lot of noise, not that much signal. But what should happen over time here is each subsequent image we take, the system should be able to kind of see, okay, now here's kind of what I'm seeing in here and be able to adjust the levels a little bit more. If it doesn't look like it's doing it too well, I'll try to adjust them myself. And we'll see kind of, there we go. Now it's starting to come down. Oh, I think we found it, guys. I know it doesn't look like much. You see how this area is a little dimmer than everything else? And this right around here tends to seem like it's got a little bit more fuzzy going on in it. I think that is our galaxy. So we're going to give it a minute here. And I think what you'll start to see, now this should actually be pretty big for my field of view based off of what my planetarium app was telling me. It's pretty nice. I can put in kind of my scope and my camera, and it'll predict how big in the field of view the actual object itself will be. As we go here and let it kind of go through, as you notice, it'll kind of get a little brighter, a little dimmer. It's just the system's trying to adjust automatically to the data that it's finding. And right now, I think that it's trying to decide whether or not I'm looking at stars or I'm trying to look at a galaxy. You can see in here my donuts. These are literally just specks of dust sitting somewhere either in my telescope, on my camera, or anywhere in between. And the fact of the matter is, you'd want to clean all this, but these optics are twitchy, right? And if you scrape them the wrong way, they're not going to work as well. And so we figured out a way around it with technology. What we've done is now there's the ability to take what I was mentioning before, flat images, to really just a picture something evenly white, and kind of at about the middle level of your camera's exposure settings. And what that does is it basically shows things like these dust motes. And then if you notice over here, image is a little darker on this side. It's a little darker up in the corners. It's called vignetting. It's kind of the nature of the beast looking down a circular thing, trying to put it on a square image. And so it'll recognize all of that. And it's something, unfortunately, this software can't do live to apply it, but just like you would stack in, a bunch of images of what you're trying to get a picture of to pull out that signal, you can actually do the opposite and bring in those flat images to minus out the kind of slight changes in color and tone and brightness that you get with those kind of specs in there. So that's something I really haven't done too much of in the past. I've just been looking at it a lot, and so I'm really excited to kind of see what that's going to be at the end of the day. Now, I assume anyone who's watching this video has probably skipped over all of me talking here, but if you haven't, I encourage you to do so. You feel free. One of the nice things about this and the fact that it's recording it live is you can kind of skip ahead, right? It's every 20 seconds this image maybe gets a little bit better. I'm probably going to leave this on it for a real good chunk of time. But already I can tell we can see this here. I know it may not seem like much for folks that don't know kind of where you go from the beginning to the end on one of these things, but you can see, I believe, the core of the galaxy here and actually starting to see some of the arms of it coming out. It should be about this big. And yeah, actually probably even a little bigger, but it should be, for what I could capture, maybe about this big in that field of view. Normally, if I could have seen it a little bit better earlier on, I would have tried to center it a little bit more into here. But beggars can't be choosers, and now that I got it, I'm gonna try to hold on to it for a little bit. Now, the other thing I'm doing is I'm running these at a high gain setting. And what that essentially does in the camera, it's kind of like ISO on a DSLR. It allows you to essentially boost the amount of every time a photon of light hits the sensor, kind of boosts that through the amplifier. So, typically if you're doing really long exposure stuff, you probably wouldn't do too much of that. But for me, and the fact that that I can only take 20 seconds of exposure at a time, I need all the help I can get on boosting that signal out. So I'm going to go ahead and try to take it. The good news is the way these cameras work is on the CMOS ones, the more you boost it, the less actual noise you get out of the camera. You still get noise, but I don't know exactly how all the math works on it, but you get a significantly less amount of noise, actually less than you get with a lot of other dedicated CCD astro cameras. So, but yeah, I'm starting to see some stuff here. It's a real narrow range where this pops out. That's kind of the problem with galaxies in general. But, so far so good. And the thing that I'm really happy about is we have not rejected a single image due to the stars getting bloated. That means my focus has been holding pretty good, and our star tracking has been holding pretty good. So we'll give it a few minutes here and just kind of see what starts coming out for us. One of the nice things I can do here is I can actually pop this into a full screen mode. So we're just focused on the image itself. I think I'll just kind of leave it there for a minute while I go inside, get a glass of water, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the last few minutes of riveting silence here. So, let me take this out of full screen mode here. Alright, so we've taken about 22 images. I can definitely see that there is some detail in there. Let's try to take a look, see what it looks like on high. Oh, you can definitely see there's a core there. There's an arm this way. I think there's another arm that way. Unfortunately, this is probably getting to the maximum of what I can grab with my particular setup and the sky conditions that we've got. But we can cheat. And that's really the cool thing about all of this here. Let me go ahead and switch this back to where it was on the max peak here. So the way I have this set up right now is kind of your standard idea of what you'd think of for taking pictures with a telescope. I've got my telescope at the back of my scope where you would normally have your eyepiece that you're looking through. I've just got my camera literally slotted right into where the eyepiece would go, and it's looking right down the barrel. That is the normal way to do this, and it basically turns my telescope into a big fat camera lens. And it really is a big fat camera lens. For any that know anything about f-stop ratios, this is an f10 setup right now, which is typically considered to be extremely slow. So what I'm going to try to do next is actually switch my scope around into what we call hyperstar setup. If anybody's looked at the first video I had on my channel, I kind of showed what the pieces of that are. But essentially, the way my scope works is I can take off a piece on the front of the scope, which is where the light comes in from, and actually attach a camera directly to that. And sounds kind of weird without looking at the scope, but what that really does, it takes this whole system from being an F10, which is incredibly slow, to an F2, which is incredibly fast. And what that should mean is things where someone would normally be taking a 2-minute exposure, I could get that same level of exposure in 20 or 30 seconds. So pretty cool. The difficult part about it is it can be a pain to focus just right. So I'm not exactly sure how good that's going to go. I think what I'm going to do here is once we're kind of done taking a little bit of a look at this galaxy and kind of get up enough images here, I'll probably let it go to about 30. Once I get that together, I'll stop this particular broadcast and I'll go ahead and start up a new one once I got my hyperstar equipment on there and seem to have it in focus. That way everybody doesn't have to sit here and watch through a whole lot of me cursing at how hard it is sometimes to get things in focus. But yeah, so I recently did mention out onto Facebook that I've got this going. I doubt anybody's up and watching right now, but if you do and you see I'm still on, you're more than welcome to comment. I haven't seen how it works yet, but supposedly this software will actually show me the comments if anyone's talking to me live, and I can actually kind of respond back to you. I think there's about a 30-second lag. And obviously, if anyone started watching this from the beginning, they're probably about an hour behind. But yeah, so I'm here if anyone wants to message me when we get there. But yeah, so we're just gonna kind of wait and let this go through here for a few more minutes. Try dragging some of these levels around, seeing what we can see. Definitely got the core there. Oh, and that's too much. So you can see it's a very fine level that you get to. And the way that this typically works in the software afterwards is you do what's called this stretch to begin with, and then you just continually refine it, and you go back and kind of stretch it again, and then you do some balancing and removing of noise, and then you kind of stretch it again until you really take this peak and really pull it out so you can kind of get all the data that you'd like to see out of it. Switch it back over to the auto range. On the max peak, it's probably doing a better job than I would anyways. Showing a lot of knots stacked here. So I'm wondering if that means this actually moved out of the way. Yeah, our number's not going up here. So it probably means my tracking is just not quite good enough, and this probably drifted out of frame. So it's really not going to get any better than where we've got it right now. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and stop this particular broadcast. Thanks anyone who did watch through this. I really appreciate it. Hopefully this was informative to you. I'll start up another one here once I get my Hyperstar equipment on, assuming it isn't a complete dumpster.